Lugere Yetia Mimiko Mimi by my nine volley, Ocho now. Ocho Nazon sheeted the Yari. I call on volley, you didn't need a yoga. Kawaloga Jima, Coco Night, we Miala. Kawalo, you take a jump. Coco Manay Yanga to the Mian, Kawaloga, Supunia. Put up Gogo, all night to the pier, also with the body. Tilatumari Pina. Kinte Kari, Wally Daddy. Hot no get up. Lumho dear, pure piagera. Cozy, a chinte carry, trolley chinala, auto video. A change in Lumho dear, came as a lucy. Emina agent Ekwaji, Panamazon Coving Valley, Ejao. No wanting Valley, Ejao. When you go valley, a quick lady, Asia mythology, a quick lady, meow. Piluya, that is the Yachi. No one may own Gidita no ma. Chiku Leshi Buama. Asia Muyabo, they lowered the Sodaboli. The Bobo Nali Abare. I want to go. Only I looked at needy. Into the take down Cuba. Cuba, shout part of P. I would delay Konocumia, Sepito Pure, however. Konocumia got a guy, such CVDs, and never got a Ubata P. Go see what to it. Go me dazu, see what to it. But I'm not that on that on it, shall not be out. Choose I have a door. Lord, Bima Macamen, Chomia, Bimano Kama. Daluara gonna lupida way and it. Giti Kari, Pide Kamyoha. Pobira Doma Suzaya Mava, take Yichi Vadama. I don't pour them, go, take out the needy, Sibure Kamyoma, go Najima. At that time, Madam Joyab Suzaya Mava, take down the Sunzamu Shia Mava. A good Sunzamu Josare Kamyoma, Sunzare Kamyoma, Sunzare Adwet. They do Surado, my body, but Sabire Malam to Yadibo. Nene Pavalo by Shiva, the Dana go a yoga like she needed. It was Sunzaya, a delay. Go net the Mangamago Planet, Sunzabo lady, and a lady Piopiavama.
In the past days, Sayadawgyi has been speaking about how to make the Dhammas good, which are needed in order for one to master oneself. If in the world the number of people who were able to master themselves, who are able to control themselves, would increase, if there were a lot of people who could do this, the world would be peaceful. Most people in the world cannot control themselves, cannot master themselves. And because of this, the world is seething, boiling hot. The Buddha spoke about the ways to master oneself. He taught the trainings of sila, morality, samadhi, concentration, and panya, wisdom. And he also spoke about what are our social responsibilities, our responsibilities as humans. If individuals would develop the trainings of sila, samadhi, and panya, and would perform their social responsibilities, then individually one would have a very peaceful world in one's own small world, and one would bring peace to one's environment. And when there are people, in this way one can create a small spot of peace in the world, and this is the way to world peace all over. So one must understand that in this life, it is, whether one believes in past lives or not, in this life, it is very necessary to gain peace. And therefore, Sayadawgyi has been speaking about the ways to, how to develop this mastery of oneself, and how to make the controlling faculties, the ruling faculties, good, which are needed for self-mastery. And Sayadawgyi has already spoken about 6 of these ways to make the ruling faculties strong. And today he will continue this topic with the 7th, which is kaye cha jivite cha anapekatang upatapeti. When one is working for one's own prosperity, one's own welfare, or for that of one's family, this can't be gained easily. One has to try appropriately. One has to work in order and do what is necessary to bring this about. So when one is working to fulfill the trainings so that one can become a true human, it is even more necessary to apply effort. It's important to make appropriate risks, to not be afraid to work wholeheartedly in the practice. Just as one works for one's own prosperity, putting out all one's effort, one should also do so, more so in the practice. People who have been daring and taken appropriate risks in the practice, who have practiced wholeheartedly, there has been no deaths by doing the practice in this way. There are a few people who died, and these are people who had disease to begin with. So today Sayadawgyi would like to talk about how to make effort without regard for one's life and limb in the practice.
Puidu sapiremha apekha nirapekha apekha suraga nge nyara boli nirapekha suraga nge nyamu kenda so bare nge re suraga ko nge ra le shi de ko midasu nge ra le shi deသူတို့မှချုပ်တယ်သွားမှာလေအန္တရာယ်ရောက်မှာလေပေါ့လေကိုယ်အမိပြုနေရလို့ရှိရင်ကိုကသူတို့အမိပြုနိုင်တော့အောင်ကြိုးစားမှုမရှိဘူးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်သူတို့မှစောင့်နေရခဲ့တယ်ပညာရေးတို့စီးပွားရေးတို့စောင့်နေရေးတို့ကျန်းမာရေးတို့စသည်ပေါ့လေတော့ဒါတွေဒါလူလောကမှာဆိုရင်ဒါတွေကရှိရတော့မှာအိန္ဒိုလောကရှိအောင်လည်းကြိုးစားရတာပဲ အဲ့ဒါလေးဒါလူလောကမှာဆိုထုံးစံတိုင်ငဲ့ရပါတယ်စိတ်ဝင်စားရပါတယ်ငဲ့ကွက်မှုရှိလို့ရှိရင်စိတ်ဝင်စားလို့ဆိုစိတ်ဝင်စားလို့ရှိရင်လည်းလူမှုတရားတွေချုပ်တဲ့တော့တာပဲဒါလူလောကထဲမှာလူရဲလို့ဖြစ်လာပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဒီငဲ့ကွက်မှုကတော့ရှိရတော့မှာပဲသို့သောငန်းတဲ့တဏှာနဲ့ငဲ့ကွက်မှုမျိုးတော့ဒါတော့မရှိရဘူးကိုတရားအရာငဲ့ကွက်မှုရှိရပါတယ်ဘယ်အာယုမျိုးမဆိုဘောလေရမှကျင့်နိုင်မယ်ဆိုတဲ့တဏှာနဲ့ငဲ့တာစိတ်ဝင်စားတာမျိုးတော့ဒါတော့မရှိရဘူးအဲ့လိုငဲ့လို့ရှိရင်တော့ဆင်းရဲဖို့တည်ကြတယ်မရရင်တားတယ်တားလို့ရရှိလာပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အဲ့ဒါတွေပျက်စီးသွားတဲ့အခါမှာဝင်နေတယ်ဒါတွေဖြစ်ရတာတစ်ပတ်ဆုံးရောက်သွားတယ်သူကတော့ဒီတော့လိုအပ်တဲ့လောက်လူကျင့်ဝအရာပေါ်လေငဲ့ပါဆင်းရဲဒုက္ခရောက်မဲ့ဟာတော့မငဲ့ရဘူးအထူးသဖြင့်အခုလိုဘဝအမဂ္ဂကျရနိုင်လို့တဲ့လူပြည်သားအောင်ကျင့်သုံးရေးလူစိတ်ထားတတ်ရေးလူသိညာရှိပြီးတော့လူတဲ့လူဖြစ်ရေးကြိုးပမ်းတဲ့အခါမျိုးမှာတော့မငဲ့တဲ့နာတွေမငဲ့ရဘူးကိုနာမှလည်းမကြောက်ရဘူးကိုချွေရတော့မှလည်းမကြောက်ရဘူးအသက်တည်မှလည်းမကြောက်ရဘူးဒါတွေစွန့်စားမှာပဲဒါတွေအဲ့ဒါတွေမငဲ့မှာဓမ္မအလုပ်ဖြစ်ပါတယ်ဓမ္မအဲ့ဒါကိုကာယစဇီဝတိစအနပ္ပခတဥပ္ပထာပိတိလို့ဘုရားအလိုကြအဲ့ဒီစိတ်ဆွမ်းအားတွေပေါ့ဒီကိုယ့်ကိုယ်အုပ်ချုပ်နိုင်စွမ်းရှိအောင်ရှိဖို့ရအတွက်အကြောင်းလေးတွေပြထားပါတယ်
In the text, there are two words, apika and nirapika. And apika means to consider, consideration, and to take into consideration. And nirapika means to be free, free of this consideration. One doesn't take any consideration. So one has consideration for oneself, for one's family, and one's family being dependent upon one understands that if one doesn't work, then they will suffer. They'll experience, they can get into trouble, they can experience some danger because they depend on one. So if one doesn't do what one can to support them, then they suffer a loss. They won't have enough to eat or enough clothes to wear. Their health may suffer. And so one works to help them. And this is the way of the world. This one has interest in helping one's family in this way. And if one doesn't have some interest and consideration for one's family, those who depend on one, then one is failing in one's social responsibility. So in the world, this type of consideration should be. We should have this type of consideration and interest, but not to an extreme, selfish, demanding way. One should not work with the attitude that I've got to get it. I've got to get it or else. That extremely selfish attitude. One should have an interest in working for one's family, but one should draw the line, because if one lets it go to an extreme where one is intent on getting something, then if one can't get that, one will experience sadness. And so one has to have some one has to have consideration for one's social responsibilities to the extent necessary. And in practice, in this practice, we are working to become truly human, to develop a humane mentality, and to develop special human knowledge. In this work, we should not have any consideration for ourselves in this work. We shouldn't have any concern or consideration for pain we may encounter, or loss, or even our life. If we don't have this type of consideration, then we will be able to do the work. This is what is called kaye cha, jivite cha, anapekatang upatapeti. That is, this is the cause, this is what the Buddha said is a cause for making the ruling factors strong that bring us self-mastery.
Yogi Gulutrip Nabana Diari Atokesura My Ponega Sweet Hotel Nilu My Ponea don't be silly. You each a bit of it do the body the lady dancing bit of to don't be sleep and loaded on you. My Pona Talaluce, you know. You also repeat all of it. The don't want a holiday to Pombido. Piambiro Polipi told her to say, the poor and be seated like Pillar in our. That my pony should told it needs for a body. Puido Kanagoya, my boy in a Bamam to Kuboine Kanagoi. You be over and the Chizamala, another day so we don't. Kilo Lemacom, another Lemacom Pillar. Matinda Mapoya de Pita. To Dora Tolumia. Not to Seduero, Gingio, Jingero, Dario Leve, I told them in that Tachizamala below Nevilla. The Kanagoyi have Burma Lujo Mamoto Asuchi Soda, Matanshina, Matanshina and Nepia. That to go the time. Eddie Matanshina and Nene, the Kanagoji for Maori. Miam. My boy, you do pet Hajimale. Nipa Malamichi Jamu, Ruma Pamatana. Davaloti, my ponero, a two salary subido, Pisiti Toluchi, not a put an epinana. I do the water. Matente Mopoya, Matan Shene and Niboli. Kanaguju, Miabido. Eddie Dega, a Nick lady told you. The Nick lady, go then not touching our body, maybe up. Just a gaze, a little bit up. Go no more, you get them with her. Agent, let us see a corner body. Hello, did they tell you out of them? The Yamati says a video, touching passion as it may be seen by Cicero to say. Era de Mishia. To Yabama Simhan Meta, Chenatanare. Karuna Mita Karuna Ponsa like Vito to Mia Gonzarago Manalo went to Machivena Poli 1,000 Lekana, Taukana, Tamuri Poli. Every time China Musolici, Eli, Tukane Tube, so we do Bemas or Tayara. Let us say time you later, Muya. I told the Pia, go to the Tiptamba on Tiari. Pitamasu, 3 views, some and other time, Kuresa Vio. Kaya Vedana Citta Dhamma call it Shukwe Ayoni. Through Boru Bose Mavali. Would be Asera. That he made on Shine with 6 to Simuri Yan Visolution. Very secretly, Agoni de Kama. Secretly Tanshini. They tell my Roma to me touch him, to me visit by season at City of Jivu. That he can go here, I told you about. Pirati Atiniane, the gay she, who she need a young and dearly, John Joseph only, since Tinia lady, the Canagoria, I told you. My boy, put up his seat, Toby solution. My pongani low. To them, I see the Lord facility Yabo Vedave. Told to work, Kanagujiga, Nitarari, told to the Poco level, Kanagungani Luyabu. A Pimpaga, a Poco you the water, Tania, a maple you the water. Nay, sound whatever. Solution Yadi Harry Miaro, patient whatever. They look shit about it. Mangeo. That's Yachiva. Pero at that time, Malam Jawab. So choose a little a subject. Sazaya, what is in a Piabito Yoga Yabido. The Malam Jawab. They look Hanan at that go. Mangaguayabu. At that point, my level, a nika, Yandulu the water I made. A Josiwa, Malola, Yandulu the water I made. Do they attach in Lily? They see Lumatori show loaded. Madiari show loaded. Naribo. They see the baby Uyarari, Nayarari. The Yarari, Kusian 16 Piarari. Pusuya, Mujuya, whatever. The Tetam Sabuto Erari Bam Shifu. The Lushi near go Lumshi Hari, Joniera Yandu, a daddy, a Dashinida, Yame, Najausa Gona. A Yatego, no little she, now what they cheated. Say, Uya Nayari, so in Pusuya, Bam Shifu. Name whatever. Did a station of Kama. The Nitari told you at a Pokuha. A decor of Nevum. The Mamjabu, Sunzaya, Nari. Elo Puyo Budameswa, which are Tavare. Go Yama, that day my Johnny the Poko or Titian Titan. Those are good here. Tiari Atulu Yoga Yadora. Tire Mataye, Lura Mashiribabu. Yoga Chile Pokuna, Yoga Piobido. A day she need water, Yajiva Vetama. Tari Taraga Piani, whatever you were. Tito Kaisa Ziudisa, Nabagata Upata Piti. Kunete Mangamakwa Penevoli, Nyavene. Sunza Atoyame Atoza Mazo, Nezo, Tanailo, Pitayame, Signale Shawame, Cha Aturi, Muyare Leve, Mane on Leve Josayame, Edelo, Wuria, Sontati, Toara. Wuria Tolu, Wuria Pila Visolution, the Tito Marisra, no Panga Lay La Roda. Era di Agolo Shea, Kurema she needed Yonanga Asavoli, a she or she, a sense, Timila Roda.
The method of Satipatthana Bhavana, which Sayadawgyi and the yogis, all of us are practicing, is truly a method for extracting gold out of the trash. So in the world, people go to the trash heap and take some junk and they fix it and they sell it and they can make money. And if we let things just lie in the trash heap, then of course they become fertilizer, they become just turn into earth. But if we take something out of the trash heap, we can fix it and we can use it. This body is no different than a rubbish heap. For example, try not bathing for a while. It'll start to smell bad. And the body won't look good either. In the body there are things like snot and spit and urine and feces, and when they come out, try not wiping them. What will happen? The body will become very disgusting. And so this body is not clean. It's in Pali asuci. It's not clean. And so, although one wouldn't want to embrace a piece of rubbish, but one can make use of this. One can make use of it. Although it is not elegant, this body, it is not clean, we can extract what is worthwhile and essential from it. When we make our physical and verbal behavior clean, civilized, peaceful, and delightful with the training of sila, this is using the body to extract gold. And from here, after taking up the training of sila, one can continue and make the mind clean so that the mind doesn't want to kill or harm people. One can insert in the mind the attitudes of loving kindness and compassion, wanting for others' welfare, having sympathy for them, and adding to this the joy when one sees another person successful. And then, on top of that, equanimity, the attitude that understands we all go according to our karma, and therefore, despite our wants for another person to be well and happy, they have their karma. So one has to nurture these attitudes in the mind. And especially as now, we have to observe with every arising object, always guard the mind with vigilant mindfulness. Whether it's kaya, vedana, chitta, or dhamma, matter, feeling, consciousness, or general objects, when they arise, one always should try to observe them. One should always have sati. And following on sati, samadhi arises, the collectedness of mind. And when these become strong, then the mind becomes clean. And there won't be any desire to harm others. This is what we gain from our body, from using our body. And from here, we come to see the difference between nama and rupa, mind and matter, and we come to see how these are related as cause and effect. This is knowledge which we gain from our body. So, although we extract valuable things from it, there's no need to favor the body. We just have to gain the essence from it. Another way to think of it is as a corpse with no life at all. So we shouldn't have any consideration for it. We shouldn't be, if we do have consideration for the body, we won't be willing to take risks in the practice. So we should not be afraid of death when we undertake the practice. We should consider that having a life is like having an enemy, because when we have life, in that lifetime we may do wrong things, that's one thing. And then in that lifetime, we age, we get sick, we suffer things that make us feel sad. So because of life, we have these, just like an enemy, it creates all these problems for us. So if we don't have this life, if we don't have any new life, then we won't have the suffering that comes with each new lifetime. So while we are alive, we need to try to gain the essence from our life. And in doing this, we shouldn't have any consideration for our life, just the same as we shouldn't have any consideration for an enemy. Those who fear death are not worthy of the Dhamma. They won't be able to gain it. But in this practice, there have not been any deaths. In fact, people have overcome their diseases. So, therefore, the Buddha said, "Kaye cha jivide cha anapekatang upatapeti." One has to have an attitude of having no consideration regarding one's body or one's life. One has to be willing to take risks in the practice. One should sit at least 1 hour without moving. One should walk for 1 hour. One should observe all other activities. So when we do this, then there will be energy created, virya, to observe the object. And following on virya, there will be sati, and then samadhi, concentration. And when these are good, one will begin to know, starting with nama and rupa, one is sure to come to know stage by stage.
Vipassana ñanဆိုတာတခြားမှာဖြစ်ပေါ်လို့ဖို့မလိုပါဘူးကိုယ်မှာရှိနေတဲ့တကယ်ရှိအဟုတ်ရှိနေတဲ့ရုပ်တရားနာတရားတွေအချင်းချင်းအကြောင်းကျိုးဆက်ဆက်ပုံတွေကိုယ်စီသဘာဝလက္ခဏာတွေပေါ့အဲဒီကိုယ်စီသဘာဝလက္ခဏာတွေကလည်းပဲအခုဖြစ်ပြီးတော့အခုပဲပျောက်သွားတာဟောင်းတဲ့တစ်ဆက်ဆိုတာပေါ့လေကိုယ်ပြင်ဖြစ်ပြီးတော့ကိုယ်ပြင်ပြတ်သွားတာအဲဒီချင်းရလေးတွေတူညီသဘာဝအချင်းရလေးတွေပေါ့လေကိုယ်စီသဘာဝတူညီသဘာဝလေးတွေအဲ့ဒါတွေကိုရှင်းရှင်းလင်းပြတ်ပြတ်သားသားသိလာတဲ့သဘောဟာဒါဝိပဿနာဉာဏ်ခေါ်တာဗျအဲဒီဝိပဿနာဉာဏ်ဟာသူရဲ့အထောက်ကိုသမာဓိတတိတတ္တဝိရိယဒီသုံးမျိုးရဲ့အထောက်ကိုနဲ့ဆိုရင်အတိညာလေးတွေကထူးခြားတာလေးတွေရှိတတ်ပါတယ်ဒီမှာအဲ့ဒါကိုစာတို့နဲ့လက်တွေ့ပေါင်းစပ်ပြီးတော့ပြောပါမယ်
With vipassana knowledge, there's no need to create something else. In one's own body, nama and rupa is really there. To see this nama and rupa, to see how this nama and rupa is related as cause and effect, to see their individual characteristics, and how these individual characteristics arise and then immediately pass away. Just now it arose, and now it's gone. Knowing the individual characteristics and the common characteristics of mind and matter is vipassana knowledge. The support for this vipassana knowledge are the factors of virya, samadhi, sati, saddha, faith, and virya, energy. And with the help of these, knowledge arises. So Sayadawgyi will speak about this in theory and practice. If one reaches the stage of Uddiyabhiya Jnana, Khanika Samadhi, momentary concentration, is very good. Moment after moment, it falls collectedly on every arising object. And it falls collectedly on every arising object without missing. Even on tiny, tiny objects. This is Khanika Samadhi. And when the energy, strength of this Khanika Samadhi becomes full, then vision, what one sees, becomes sharp and keen. This sharp, clean, clear vision is the power of Samadhi. The object arises, and there's the knowing mind, and like the way something is being sliced segment by segment with a knife, so too the object and the knowing mind, one by one, appear very, very clearly. This keen, sharp ability to see is due to samadhi, and it is called teka bhava, the nature of being sharp and keen.
Samadhi pala, samadhi swain, kauno sheye, ami temyata, ami shina, samadhi swain piwali, ami temyati. Tatiga leve, tiwali sa malota, manai lotelu, mishia when the careo. Pore, I want the lady, Shina, Dhamma, Shina. Lute, Lumishia, Lule, Lumadira, Chechen, that the tea cone the bobo. Editidi, Tamala, Lucia, a miele Tamala, Tanama Miela, a miele Chepiana. Vadi colo Pepeta Shishin di Yatru, Tanda Mamaleti Larabe. J. Piamla Leti Larabe. The chip Malaluchi, Miaji Careti Larabe. You are Pauna Malachi, Pauna wrote the Pauna, Tiara Malaluchi, Paunali pian bito kare downa dinali dila. Pure carry Malaysia Malaysia Purali pian bito. Yaji Security Letonilo, Security Medical Security to go with go. The Karagotama Marcom, a Mientan at the holiday killer. The cook my Nakuto, Miaiti, Mientan at the wall. The tea swine purely a Mientamadi. The tea swine purely a Mienchapiandi, so I wanted to mind. Jebimantida, you did the Mata Yogi Pogori, Edith Peter Body, the tea come the law. I mean, I never the carriage, J. Piamia, Tanda Mamadila.
This is called Samadhi Bala, the power of Samadhi. And if the power of Samadhi is good, then our vision will be sharp and clean. Sati, which is able to observe every arising object, even small things, without missing them. When it observes every arising object and is strong, not missing, or when one misses, one knows it immediately. When sati is strong, one's vision is also strong, and it is also broad. One knows in a very firm way and also in a broad way. For example, when one observes the rising, it's as though one observes many. The mindfulness spreads and one knows many risings. Or when one observes heat, one observes the heat, but there's many particles of heat there. When one observes thinking, one observes one, but one knows several, 2 or 3. So when sati is strong, the vision is firm. When sati is strong, vision is broad. And yogis who are observing respectfully, to the extent their sati is good and strong, they see in a firm and broad way.
Mati looked at the Era voice and did that. They call my last of your body. Nini that. Popoje era di Maya, Mamma Buntoric to Amiala Lucia, a low rape yet or that. The art of the way, Tamaneta, my sister Lalucia, Mona, and ye jaded from your. Came with St. Javido Dora, Yea, Vido Lara. No junior Yemia quoted Vido, Thali, Yin Talaluci, and Nelly outtime Dora. Boy, Chidella. Say in any time, Dora, Yea, Nelly, say in any time, Dora. Boy, said the Chila Lily. The Mabita, Yea, Dedali, Melodaman, so Nigeria, Piquamia. Kuna now near quoted Yin Titalaluci, and every time Dora body. Nego Mataro to her Chidora. Secretly a Chila, a Chitata Corel. Chidology, a Miale Shena, Bauso, Ponali Malachi, Tona Lady, Tina Lady, Pipetata, Pina Maluci, Lushada Lady, Vishada Lady. Secusa Jansimuri Panaluci, Secretary to Kubitu. Tipito Piatara, Shin. Now, Amici Toilet, era Teatro, Tia that it will have his Lucia. Colita, so we don't Era de Share Mavoli, Mataya Madame Benevoli. Kong so Sevito Manaluci, Gidatia Yavido, a Dinian in Piatala that သိဉာဏ်လေးတိုးတက်လာတတ်တယ်အဲ့ဒီကမှယုံတတ်တာဆိုတာပေါ့လေကြည်တတ်တာယုံတတ်တာတဲ့ညီကြီးတဲ့မွေရအောင်မလွတ်တတ်မှနိုင်တော့စိတ်တည်ကြီးလာတယ်တည်တဲ့ဟာဒီပြပြတတ်တာသိလာတယ်ရှင်းရှင်းလင်းသိလာတယ်တဲ့ယုံတတ်တာဖြစ်လာတယ်အဲ့တော့တတ်တာစွာရင်ပြေဝလေအမြင်ကြည်ရွှင်တွက်လက်သည်တဲ့ဓမ္မအဲ့ဒါလေးဒီတော့ယောဂီများတရားတွေအားထုတ်လို့နည်းနည်းလေးအတွေ့လေးတွေကောင်းလာပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အဲ့ဒါလည်းမှတ်ရတယ်မှတ်ပဲနဲ့ဒီတိုင်းငြိမ်းနေရင်စိတ်တွေပြန်နှုတ်ကြည့်သွားတတ်တယ်အနေတွေပြန်ထလာတတ်တယ်အနေတွေပြန်ထလာလို့ရှိရင်မကြည်တော့ဘူးအဲ့ဒါလေးအဲ့ဒါတတိထားဖို့အရေးကြီးပါတယ်
So when one sees the Dhamma, one tends to be, one may be happy with that. And this happiness of what one sees, happiness with what one sees may make one miss a noting. So one has to observe as soon as that arises. Otherwise, defilements can come in and make the mind unclean. So when one's observation is connected moment by moment, then the dirt of the mind becomes distanced. And the mind becomes clear, just like water. When you have a glass of water that is muddy or dirty and you let it sit, and when it sits, the sediment drops down and the water itself becomes clear and clean. That is like the mind when it is free of defilements. So the mind first becomes clear, and this is bright faith that one experiences. So then one sees, for example, when one notes one thought, one sees many thoughts, one by one. One sees, one's vision becomes very, one sees many things instead of just one. And if one can observe without missing, then one's knowledge will become quick and clear. So first there is the bright faith, where the mind becomes clear, and then trusting faith, which makes the knowledge become quick as well as clear. So when yogis have some good experience, they have to be careful about this. They can't let themselves sit there and enjoy it, because if they do, then the dirt will arise and the mind will become unclear again. So one has to be careful about this.
အမြင်တိုးတက်တယ်ဆိုတာရှိပါသေးတယ်သူယောဂီတွေကွေးရကမမှန်တော့ဒီနေ့လာလဲဒါဒီနေ့လာလဲဒါဒီနေ့လာလဲဖောင်းလာပင်တော့ဒီနေ့လာလဲကြွရတာလာနာချက်ကွေးတာဆက်တာဒီရဲကိုနဲ့တဲ့မငဲ့မငဲ့ဖဲနဲ့စွန့်စားမှုမရှိဘူးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့ခဏတော့ပြင်လိုက်ရွှေ့လိုက်ပြောင်းလိုက်လုပ်နေဒါတတ္တိကြောင့်တဲ့သဘောပြတယ်အခက်ခဲနဲ့တွေ့လို့ရှိရင်ကြံ့ကြံ့ခံရမှာရှေ့ကိုလည်းတူးရတဲ့တတ္တိရှိရမှာဝိရဆိုတာရဲရင်သူခေါ်ပါတယ်အဲ့ဒီရဲရင်သူရဲ့အလုပ်ကတော့နောက်မဆုတ်ရဘူးရှေ့တိုးရတယ်အဲ့ဒါဝိရိယခေါ်တာပဲဒါပဲယောဂီတွေအခက်ခဲနဲ့တွေ့တာကတော့အဲ့ဒီကိုယ်ရဲ့မခံစားမှုတွေပါပြီးပေါ်တဲ့အခါအချိန်ကြာကြာထိုင်ရမှာကိုဝင်လေးတာအချိန်ပြည့်အောင်ထိုင်ရမှာဝင်လေးတာအချိန်ကြာထိုင်ရဝင်လေးတာတွန့်တယ်သူကတော့အဲ့တော့မလွဲသာလို့ရန်သူနဲ့ရင်ဆိုင်တဲ့အခါမှာကိုယ်ကဆုတ်ကဆိုရင်ရန်သူကဖိလိုက်မှာပေါ့ကိုယ်မှာအင်အားတွေရှိတယ်ကိုယ်မှာအင်အားရှိတော့ကြံ့ကြံ့ခံရမယ်ကြံ့ကြံ့ခံလို့ရှိရင်ရန်သူရှိမတိုးရဘူးကိုယ်ကတတိရှိတာကိုတိုးလာလဲဒီရန်သူထိတော့မှဆိုနားလေတာကိုဒါပဲအခက်ခဲနဲ့တွေ့လို့ရှိရင်ကြံ့ကြံ့ခံရမယ်အဲ့ဒါရဲရဲမှုရှိရတယ်ဒီမှာ အဲ့တော့ရဲရဲမှုရှိလို့ရှိရင်အခက်ခဲနဲ့တွေ့ပြီမလို့အဲ့ဒီအခက်ခဲကိုကြော်သွားနိုင်တယ်ဆိုလိုတာကတော့ပေါ်တိုင်းအာယုံမလွတ်တမ်းမှတ်နိုင်ဖို့ရာအတွက်စောစောပိုင်းကတော့အပူတပြင်းအားဆက်ရတဲ့သဘောလေးတွေရှိတယ်အားဆက်မှုကနဲတော့အပြင်းနဲ့ဝင်လာတတ်တယ်အဲ့ဒီအားဆက်မှုကကျဲတာလေးလည်းရှိတယ်လွတ်တာလေးလည်းရှိတယ်တတိကြောက်တဲ့သဘောပြတယ်အထူးသဖြင့်ကိုယ်နာမှာအသက်တွေမှာကြောက်တာပေါ့လေတတိကြောက်တာပေါ့လေအဲဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အခက်ခဲမကြော်တော့အခက်ခဲကိုရင်မဆိုင်ရတော့အခက်ခဲကိုရင်ဆိုင်ပြီးတော့ရှုမှတ်လို့ဒါတွေကြော်သွားပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ငကောကဒါတွေမကြော်ဘူးလို့ထင်နေတာကိုမှတ်လိုက်တဲ့ခါကျတော့ဒါတွေကြော်သွားတဲ့ခါကျတော့ခက်ကလေးကြော်သွားတဲ့ခါကျတော့တတိတွေရှိလာတယ်ငါဒါတွေမကြော်ဘူးလို့ထင်နေတာအခုကြိုးစားလိုက်တဲ့ခါကျတော့ကြောလာပါလားဆိုတော့ဝင်တာပဲအဲ့ဒါညာနေတိုးတဲ့အခက်ကလေးကြော်သွားရင်ရှေ့ကိုညာနေတခါတည်းဖြည်းဖြည်းတစ်စီချင်းတိုးသွားတော့ပဲမလို့တမှတ်နိုင်ဖို့ရအတွက်အားဆိုင်အားကောင်းလေလေခုနတတိတို့တမာရီတို့စိတ်ကြည်လင်မှုတို့အဲ့ဒါလေးလည်းအားရှိလာလေလေဝိရိယရှိတော့ရှေ့ကိုညာနေတိုးသွားတာတဲ့ဝိရိယစွန့်ရင်ပြေဝလေညာမြင်တိုးတက်သည်တဲ့ညာမြင်တိုးတက်ဆိုတာဒါပဲအဲ့ဒါကိုကျမ်းဂန်များမှာအတိညာတော့အတိညာပဲဒါပေမဲ့လို့အခုပြောခဲ့တဲ့တရား၄ခုရဲ့အထောက်ကူပြည့်ပြည့်ဝရလာပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တမာရီအထောက်ကူရရင်ဉာဏ်မြင်ထက်မြက်ရှင်းလင်းပြတ်သားမယ်တတိယစွမ်းရင်ရောက်ရလာလို့ရှိရင်ဉာဏ်မြင်သာမှာမယ်ခြေပြတ်မယ်တတရဲ့စွမ်းရင်ရလာပြီဆိုရင်ဉာဏ်အမြင်ဟာကြည်ရွှင်တွက်လက်မယ်ဝိရိယအားကိုရပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဉာဏ်မြင်တိုးတက်မယ်တဲ့ယုံနဲ့ပိုင်းခြားသိမှုကအစကြောင်းကျိုးစစ်တဲ့မြဲပုံလေးရိတ်ကလေးပေါ်ရိတ်ကလေးပြောက်ကုပ္ပိဖြစ်ပြီးတော့ကုပ္ပိပြတ်သွားတာလေနောက်အပြည့်တည်းကြီးတွေ့တာလေအပြည့်တည်းကြီးတွေ့လို့ရောက်ဖို့ထင်တာလေအစင်းစင်းညာလေးတွေကခါတော့ပွင့်သွားမှာပဲအဖြစ်ပြက်တွေကများနေတော့အစိုးနဲ့မမှတ်နိုင်ဘူးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အဲ့ဒီခါကျတော့အစိုးကိုရပ်ပြီးတော့အသာလေးကြည့်နေရတော့ပဲတစ်ခုပြီးတစ်ခုခါလည်းသိနေတော့တိတ်ပြီးတော့ရှင်းလင်းပြတ်သွားတာပဲဒီခါကျလို့ရှိရင်တော့အဲ့ဒါပဲအဲ့ဒီအစဉ်တည်ရောက်နိုင်တယ်ဒါစာရမဖြစ်နိုင်တဲ့ဟာတွေပြောနေတာမဟုတ်ဘူးယောဂီတွေအတွေ့နဲ့ဖြစ်နေတဲ့ဟာတွေပြောနေတာပါကြိုးစားကြည့်ပါကြိုးစားကြည့်လို့ရှိရင်ဒီဟာတွေရနိုင်ပါလေတော့
Vision also progresses. Without virya, the yogis just experience the same thing each day. There's just rising, falling, lifting, moving, placing. And when one doesn't have the courage to face discomfort, then one changes one's position. So it won't be easy to progress. One has to have courage to face difficulties. A hero is one who advances when difficulties are encountered. So if instead one views discomfort or sitting for a full hour as a big burden, then it will be hard to make progress in the practice. If one can't help it, but has to meet up with an enemy, one can't avoid it. If one retreats, then the enemy will get the advantage and advance. So instead, one has to advance to meet the enemy. And one has to bear, in terms of the practice, one has to bear discomfort with strength. So if one does this, one can overcome it. So this is what is meant by observing the arising object without missing. One will come to be able to do that. So one has to apply effort. Otherwise, laziness will come in. And when laziness comes in, other kilesas will also come in. And one's courage will be weakened. And one won't be brave enough to face difficulties. But if one faces the discomfort and the obstacles, one can overcome them. And one gains courage by this. One becomes bold. And because one's effort increases and becomes strong, knowledge progresses. To the extent that one's effort is good, then sati, samadhi, clarity of mind, and virya become good. So when the virya progresses and the power of virya is strong, then one's vision will progress. When samadhi is strong, then our knowledge becomes sharp and clean. When sati is strong, knowledge becomes firm and broad. When faith, saddha, is strong, knowledge becomes clear and also agile. When virya is strong, knowledge will progress. So one will go from seeing nama and rupa to seeing how they are related as cause and effect. And then one will see how these, just now they arise and then they disappear. And one will come to see how many, many things arise and pass away very quickly. When one's noting can't keep up with the objects, when one can't label them because they are so fast, one can just watch them one by one. So at this point the vision is very clear. And this is not something that is impossible. It is what is described in the text, and it is also what yogis actually experience. And if you try, you can gain this. Because one makes effort courageously, wholeheartedly, daringly, one's vision becomes sharp and clean, sharp and keen. It becomes firm and broad. One's vision becomes clear and agile, and it progresses steadily. At this time, will there be any boredom? Will there be any laziness or wanting to take it easy? No, at this time, one's courage becomes very strong, and when that happens, one's knowledge becomes complete in a short time. If one has not come to this stage within a little more than a month, then it shows that one's effort is weak. One's faith is not there. One's faith is weak. So, those who want to become a true human, to develop a truly humane heart with better than average human knowledge, who want to gain mastery of themselves, Sayadawgyi urges all of you to try to do this in the remaining time. That's all for today. SADHU.